Summer Baldwin was born on August 27, 1976, in Tacoma, Washington. When she was young, her family relocated to Roswell, New Mexico, where she spent most of her childhood and teenage years. Raised in a close-knit family, Summer was known for her vibrant personality and infectious laughter, always bringing warmth and joy to those around her. She was such a likable person. She just seemed to love everything. She was always the first one to laugh, and her laugh was such a funny little laugh. Despite growing up in a stable and loving home, Summer's life took a difficult turn during her teenage years when she fell in with the wrong crowd. This led her down a path of substance misuse. To support her growing dependency, she became involved in transactional intimacy, which soon led to her facing legal troubles. By her mid-20s, she became a single mother of 4 children, struggling to provide for them while navigating the challenges of her situation. In 2002, Summer relocated to the small city of Lubbock, Texas, seeking a fresh start. Her mother, Yuva Roback, became deeply concerned since they had no family or connections there. Notwithstanding her circumstances, Summer stayed in regular contact with her parents, reassuring them that she was managing and doing her best to be okay. While living in Lubbock, Summer continued her work in transactional intimacy. This path later took an unforeseen turn when it led her into a high-profile investigation. In early 2005, she found herself being a key witness in a federal counterfeiting case. Shortly after her involvement in the legal proceedings, Summer returned to her work as a woman of the night. Late in the evening on September 11, 2005, Summer was riding in a red pickup truck with a man when she spotted her close friend, Margie Estrada. At that time, Margie was in her truck that was parked outside a 7-Eleven on 8th Street and Avenue Q in Lubbock. Like Summer, Margie also worked as an escort. Eager to catch up, Summer stepped out of the vehicle and approached her friend, mentioning that the man in the truck was her client. After a brief chat, Summer said her goodbyes, casually assuring Margie that they'd see each other the next day. The following morning, September 12, 2005, Margie tried reaching out to Summer to check in. When Summer didn't answer, Margie assumed she was still asleep, so she didn't think much of it. Throughout the day, Margie kept waiting for a call or text from Summer, but none came. Though concerned, she reasoned that Summer was likely occupied with her client. After all, it wasn't unusual for them to go days without speaking. Little did Margie know, she was never going to hear from her friend again. On the morning of September 13, 2005, a worker at the City of Lubbock sanitation landfill came across a suitcase that appeared unusually heavy. Curious, he unzipped it to investigate its contents. Inside, he discovered what seemed to be the undressed body of a woman curled into a fetal position. At first, the worker assumed it was just a mannequin, recalling similar pranks he had encountered in his line of work. However, as he looked closer, the unsettling truth became clear: he had found the lifeless body of a woman. Panicking, the worker immediately notified his superiors, who quickly contacted the Lubbock Police Department. Shortly after 10 a.m., detectives and medical examiners arrived at the scene. As the medical team began documenting the gruesome discovery, detectives launched their investigation into the suspicious death. Given the enormous size of the landfill and the overwhelming amount of debris, investigators knew they had a daunting task ahead of them. The landfill was about 2 years deep of debris and about 3 football fields long. It was probably the worst place you could find a victim of a homicide, forensically. Despite the grim circumstances, officers were thankful that the landfill worker was curious enough to open the suitcase. Had he not done so, the suitcase and the body inside would likely have been crushed and lost among the vast debris. The fact that somebody at a Lubbock landfill noticed what looked like a new suitcase and decided to stop and open it. I mean, what are the chances of that happening? The first priority for investigators was to identify the woman. With no clothing or personal belongings on her, there were no immediate clues to her identity. That was, except for a small but telling detail, a tattoo on her ankle that read, "Summer." Detectives then ran her fingerprints through the motor vehicle database. This confirmed that the woman in the suitcase was Summer Baldwin. The autopsy revealed that Summer had suffered blunt force trauma to her head and back, along with signs of ligature strangulation around her neck. The relatively fresh nature of her injuries indicated that she had likely been dead for less than 24 hours. Even more disturbing, the medical examiners determined that her cause of death was positional asphyxiation, a condition where the body's position prevents proper breathing. That means she was buried alive with injuries that were horrific and then left to be suffocated in her tomb of a suitcase. As if this wasn't tragic enough, the autopsy also revealed that Summer was approximately 5 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. Authorities soon located Summer's parents to deliver the heartbreaking news. Although her parents had long been concerned about the dangers of her lifestyle, the brutality of her death was something they struggled to comprehend. "On our last talk, everything was okay. She seemed to be fine. I just couldn't believe that somebody could have killed her." With a sense of urgency, investigators worked to determine who was responsible for Summer's horrific death. They understood that the longer the investigation took, the greater the risk that the perpetrator might evade capture. Fortunately, Lubbock was a relatively small city. Upon searching the hotel room where Rosendo Rodriguez had stayed, investigators found several incriminating pieces of evidence that connected him to Summer Baldwin's murder. Among the items recovered was a receipt for the latex gloves purchased from Walmart, along with traces of blood matching Summer's DNA on the hotel room carpet. The evidence, combined with the Walmart surveillance footage and his connection to the red pickup truck, solidified Rodriguez as the prime suspect. Authorities arrested Rodriguez and interrogated him about his involvement in Summer's death. Initially, he denied any wrongdoing, claiming that he had consensually engaged with Summer but had no part in her death. However, the overwhelming evidence against him made it clear that this was not the case. As the investigation into Rodriguez deepened, detectives began to uncover more about his double life. On the surface, Rodriguez appeared to be a well-adjusted, ambitious young man with a bright future ahead. But behind closed doors, he was leading a secret, darker lifestyle, often soliciting women for transactional intimacy and engaging in violent behavior. The case against Rodriguez took another horrifying turn when investigators revisited the disappearance of Joanna Rogers. Although Joanna's body had never been found, detectives grew increasingly convinced that Rodriguez was involved in her disappearance as well. Further investigation into Rodriguez's phone and internet records revealed that he had been communicating with Joanna around the time she went missing, solidifying suspicions that he was involved in both cases. In an attempt to secure a conviction, the authorities turned to forensic evidence, including DNA tests and digital footprints. With mounting pressure, Rodriguez eventually confessed to the murders of both Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers. He provided disturbing details about how he had killed both women and disposed of their bodies, leaving no doubt about his involvement. After a lengthy trial, Rosendo Rodriguez was convicted of both murders and sentenced to death. The case brought some closure to the families of Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers, though the trauma and grief of losing their loved ones remained. Rodriguez's double life shocked the Lubbock community, highlighting the dangers of hidden violence lurking beneath seemingly normal lives. For years to come, the story of Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers would serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and the enduring strength of their families in the face of unimaginable tragedy. Rodriguez's trial became a focal point of public attention in Lubbock and across Texas. The brutal nature of the crimes, combined with the fact that 2 young women had been victims, shocked the community. During the trial, prosecutors painted a chilling picture of Rodriguez as a man who meticulously planned the murders and attempted to cover his tracks. The defense tried to argue for leniency, citing his military service and lack of a prior criminal record. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and the jury was not swayed by these arguments. Rodriguez's confession provided crucial details about what happened to both Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers. He admitted to killing Summer in a violent outburst after soliciting her for services. Following the attack, he placed her injured body into the suitcase, believing she was already dead. The fact that Summer was still alive when she was placed in the suitcase made her death even more horrific, as she had suffocated inside it before being discarded in the landfill. Rodriguez showed no remorse during his confession, which only deepened the horror for the victims' families and the public. The search for Joanna Rogers remains intensified after Rodriguez's confession. With the details he provided, authorities focused their efforts on the Lubbock landfill, the same location where Summer Baldwin's body had been found. After an extensive search, spanning months and involving the sifting of thousands of tons of debris, Joanna's remains were finally recovered in October 2006. The discovery of her remains, though devastating for her family, brought them a sense of closure after 2 years of uncertainty and heartache. In the sentencing phase of the trial, the families of both Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers made emotional statements to the court. They spoke about the loss of their daughters, the pain they endured, and the enduring impact of the crimes on their lives. Summer's mother, Yuva Roback, expressed the deep sorrow she felt knowing that her daughter had been taken from her in such a cruel way. Joanna's parents, Joe Bill and Kathy Rogers, shared their anguish over the years of not knowing what had happened to their daughter, only to learn that she had met such a tragic end. In 2008, Rosendo Rodriguez was sentenced to death for the murders of Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers. His execution date was set after a series of unsuccessful appeals, and on March 27, 2018, Rosendo Rodriguez was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. As his execution approached, he continued to maintain that his actions had not been premeditated, though the evidence suggested otherwise. Rodriguez's execution brought an end to one of the most notorious cases in Lubbock's history, but for the families of Summer and Joanna, the scars of their loss remained. The cases of Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers left a lasting impact on the Lubbock community. Vigils were held in their memory, and local organizations pushed for greater awareness and safety measures for women in vulnerable situations. Their stories were a stark reminder of how dangerous the world could be, even in seemingly quiet communities, and how easily lives could be shattered by violence. Today, the memories of Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers live on in the hearts of those who knew and loved them. Their stories continue to resonate, serving as both a cautionary tale and a call for justice and protection for those who are at risk. Though their lives were tragically cut short, their legacies remind us of the need to remain vigilant and compassionate, striving to create a world where such senseless violence no longer exists. The aftermath of the trials for Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers left deep emotional scars on their families, who struggled to cope with the profound loss. Yuva Roback, Summer's mother, faced the dual heartbreak of losing her daughter and her unborn grandchild, transforming her grief into advocacy for victims' rights and raising awareness about violence against women. Joanna's family, after nearly 2 years of uncertainty, finally found some closure when her remains were discovered, but the pain of her absence persisted. The brutal nature of their murders sparked vital discussions about personal safety, healthy relationships, and the societal dangers faced by young women. These tragedies led to the emergence of community outreach programs aimed at educating youth about dating violence and its signs. Advocates, including Yuva, called for legislative changes to better protect victims and improve law enforcement responses to domestic violence. Their tragic stories prompted a movement toward stricter laws and greater resources for victims, ensuring that their experiences would inspire change. Community memorials and awareness campaigns honored Summer and Joanna not just as victims but as vibrant individuals, emphasizing the importance of remembrance and the ongoing fight for a safer society. While their absence leaves an irreplaceable void, their legacies continue to inspire efforts aimed at preventing future violence, highlighting the need for vigilance and compassion in creating a world where such tragedies are no longer tolerated. In the years following the trials, Yuva and Joanna's family dedicated themselves to ensuring that their daughter's stories would not be forgotten. They became advocates for change, speaking out at events and collaborating with local organizations to promote awareness about the dangers of violence against women. Their efforts culminated in the establishment of scholarships in Summer and Joanna's names, aimed at empowering young women to pursue education and careers, thereby fostering independence and resilience. Community workshops were organized to educate both men and women about healthy relationships, consent, and the importance of speaking out against violence. These initiatives aimed to transform the tragic losses into powerful learning moments for others, emphasizing that awareness and education could save lives. As Yuva often stated, we must turn our pain into purpose. The ongoing dialogue surrounding Summer and Joanna's cases sparked a broader movement that not only honored their memory but also encouraged individuals to take action against domestic violence and advocate for legislative reforms that protect the vulnerable. Their families' stories became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to unite in the fight against violence and ensure that no one else would have to endure the heartache they faced.